John would have yelled at me. So, you know, you deliver all of the content asynchronously. All the assignments, discussions, projects, everything is asynchronous. But you open up the door to have some live interaction to make sure that the students feel engaged just a little bit more. Because depending on who you are as an instructor, you may or may not have that ability to connect through your discussions. You may be a little shy on the video side. And so having that 1% where you can have an office hour, interact, check in with them, see how they're doing, that is fantastic. I also use that to instill this idea of doing more and more one-on-ones. So depending on the department, depending on the flexibility that you have, you know, you say, for instance, you're teaching a 3-hour-a-week course. So, and that's my case, even though I'm teaching remotely, I do have a little bit of flexibility to, with the approval of my department head, to say, okay, I'm going to meet with them once a week for a couple of hours. So it's supposed to be 2 hours and 50 minutes. But there's the assumption that you can take a break in the middle of that. So we'll see how much time that actually is. The leeway that I think is important, if you can get it from your department head, is to say, okay, I'm gonna spend this much time, excuse me, this much time with the class, and then I'm gonna spend the remaining piece doing one-on-ones with the students. So depending on the type of course that you're teaching, you say, okay, I'm gonna dedicate 2 hours every week to everybody if you're doing remote, and then the rest would be, you know, just one-on-ones. But if you're in a fully asynchronous course, again, 99% asynchronous, the rest of the time is office hours and one-on-ones. You're spending time with students working on either their papers, their software projects, something that they're in. I keep thinking of Ira from our July cohort. You know, he's teaching Pro Tools for online editing. So hard to do a lot of the things that he likes to do from a face-to-face perspective completely asynchronous. So we talked about, and I need to actually do a one-on-one with him to talk about how he structures that for his course, so that he builds certain things in, and then the rest of the time he carves out so that he meets with half of his students one week and maybe half of the students the other week, and then continues that cycle throughout the semester.
So for instance, for my writing class, I meet with them 2.5 hours or so. And somewhere in like maybe a quarter of the way through the course, I have one-on-one meetings with them, and I set it up so, you know, like maybe 10, 15 minutes for each student, and they would come into the classroom and they would only show up that day for the time that they needed to see me.
Right.
That works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's imagine that we're all doing fully asynchronous, just so we can wrap our head around that. You could, you know, I wrote it down because I want to make sure I reinforce this. There's very few things you can't do in a course asynchronously. You know, so, you know, I remember going through our blueprints for each course, the CDMs, and time again, I would see these activities that were being done live through WebEx, and I pushed back. I said, why do you have to do that? And say, well, that's what I'm used to. Yeah, I get it. But you can deliver that same content as a mini lecture, and then you can focus your live time on one-on-ones and office hours. And that fulfills the definition of an asynchronous course. And the benefit, and there's some serious benefits that I don't think everybody, you know, I don't think everybody realizes. When you record video like that for students, you're giving them an opportunity to be able to watch that over and over again. So if a student doesn't catch it the first time, you know, if you're doing it live, it might be gone forever. They might have missed the point completely. They might have been distracted by you know, a sibling and, you know, off to the left, or, you know, somebody asking them a question off to the right, or they just zoned out because they've been sitting there for an hour and a half. You know, these things happen. So, you know, recording mini lectures and delivering that to the students in an asynchronous fashion, just uploading the video for them to watch whenever they can during that week. That is, in a lot of ways, a much better prospect. Especially, let's dissect a little bit what happens in a live video. The instructor delivers the content, and it's almost a, you know, it's a one-way conversation. It's not even a conversation. It's a one-way, you know, let me tell you about, you know, editing in the 1950s, you know, and they go through this thing. Granted, they might leave a little bit of room at the end for some questions, but for the most part, they're just giving a lecture. And so why not package that as a mini lecture, a little video? It's 9 minutes, 42 seconds, put it up there, and then you have this library, you have this collection, and you can use it going forward for years, you know, as long as it's evergreen, as we call it, in terms of the content. It's not something that would change over time. It's historical or just foundational. So from an asynchronous perspective, that's where, you know, I believe in putting that effort. You can put in all of those pieces. And then when it comes, and that's just the content side, add some podcasts, asynchronous, add some, you know, articles or chapters in books, or videos that you find online, TED Talks, YouTube, somewhat. All of that is asynchronous. So the content, by and large, there's nothing, in my opinion, that really has to be live, unless it's just a debate. But a debate would be a learning activity. That's a little bit different. And so let's move to learning activities. You know, we talk about different things that lead to understanding. You know, so you've established your learning objectives. You've devised a set of content that is important for the student to understand what it is you're trying to get across that week. And then there's the learning activities, which are supposed to be designed to help the student get there. Okay, so it's an assignment, it's a discussion board, a project of some kind. And I'm stopping short of assessments just a little bit. I want to focus on the learning activity piece, which is none of that has to be synchronous. You know, the discussion board, if managed properly, can be very, very useful for the student and the instructor, because you set them up with, you know, read this, watch this, listen to this, and then here are 3 questions that I want you to ponder, to think about, and to write about. And that's the beginning of a good discussion. Ensuring that there's good parameters in terms of what the expectations are, in terms of, you know, when to post, what that post should look like, who to respond to, how many classmates to respond to, and what does a response look like. And then maybe, you know, other expectations. I always have another expectation to circle back and respond to somebody who responded to you. And then that kind of completes the discussion. And, you know, the instructor's role, yes, you should chime in once in a while. But for the most part, once you get them going, you know, just back off a little bit. Let the discussion happen.
So somebody asked me, what if nobody responds to me? What do I do?
Well, if
Like,
another,
okay, where's Jamie and Nell? I need to be
yeah.
here.
Well, if another student doesn't respond to them, then you can maybe, depending on what their initial post was, you know, what is it about what they wrote that isn't attracting attention? And this happened a few times in OTE. You know, I would look at some of the posts by some of the students, and I wasn't surprised that they didn't get any response, because what they put out there was either the basic, the bare minimum,
Mm.
or it just wasn't interesting. And that's not to be overly critical, but there's a way to put information out there that invites response, and that's part of that conversation, is how to post something that's going to invite a response. And that's why we talk about this idea of asking a question at the end of your post, so that it prompts somebody to respond.
Okay. Right. Okay. I'm going to put that in there.
And so if a student has that experience and they're like, why doesn't anybody respond to me?
Right.
Well, you say, oh, let's talk about what you wrote. Let's talk about what they're getting out of the conversation. And it's a mirror of what happens in real life. And that's the beauty of this is, whether if you're debating synchronous versus asynchronous, the same rules apply in some respects. It's just a different platform.
Yeah.
I mean, they have asynchronous conversations all the time. They just don't see it that way.
Yeah.
Email back and forth, text back and forth, messaging back and forth. It's all asynchronous, because I don't, I was, right before we started, I was going through my LinkedIn messaging. And these are conversations that I'm having with people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in different time zones. So yeah, they're going to respond when it's comfortable for them.
Right.
I cleared my message box in LinkedIn last night around midnight before I went to bed. And I woke up this morning and I looked and I had 25 responses. And so clearly this is, I think the term asynchronous throws people off because they don't realize that it's what they already do.
It's foreign. They don't realize they do it all the time. When I posted stuff for the students, I was following the same format where, they would have to post first before they get to see anybody else posts and so forth. Where was I going with this? So, and that seemed to work. They asked me, how long does the post have to be? And I said, well, the nice part about not being able to see somebody else's post is that you're out there, you're swimming by yourself, and you have to really think about the material that you read to respond to that. So you can't just say, oh, gee, that was great, or I agree with that person, or something, because there's nobody to agree with until you make your post. I said, so in some respects, if you feel intimidated having a conversation in class, you don't have to feel intimidated doing it this way, because there's nobody to judge what you're saying, and you're putting the first word out there, and then people will respond to what you say. And then I talked about netiquette, and so.
Yeah, and it's something that, especially the first couple of weeks, I think it's important to give rich feedback in terms of the discussion, specifically to the students, outside of what anybody else can see, just one-on-one, is to say, you got to put a little bit more into your response. You can't just, the attaboy doesn't work. Sorry?
When you're on a discussion board,
Mm-hmm.
When they're threading,
Right.
Then how would I make an individual response to that student?
When you grade.
Okay. Got it.
And
okay.
now the catch-22 there is that a lot of students don't check their grades. As long as they see a grade that's somewhat okay.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. If they see, if you're doing it out of 10 points, for instance, and you're saying their initial post is worth, X amount of points, whatever.
Right.
They're not going to really pay attention. If you see like kind of a serious issue in terms of their response, then that's an opportunity to shoot them an email and say, look, I just want to, jump out of the grading schema and just talk to you directly, because I'm not sure if you're seeing my notes, but I think there's a reason why your classmates aren't responding to you. And so that's the conversation. Now, I don't know if it happened to you. I can't recall at this point, but one of my tricks in terms of the grading is that if I want their attention, I give them a 5, out of 10, or I give them, you know, half of what the total score is. And then they're like, whoa, you know, I don't ever give them a 0, but my
Yeah.
5 is my own internal indicator that I need to come back to it, and it's to get their attention. So I do that, and then I usually shoot an email depending on what it is.
Okay.
But it's the challenge is to get them past what we call the attaboys, which is just saying, oh, that was a great post.
Right.
There's
Right.
nowhere to go from there.
I know. Yeah.
And you know, if you walk up in a real discussion and you have that exact same type of conversation and say, oh, I liked what you wrote last week. And then silence. That's not a conversation.
No.
You know, the person's gonna be like, this, what's going on over here? This is weird. So I think we have to, and that's why I say the first couple of weeks is so important, to push them, nudge them, support them, model the good behavior. So, you know, being on there and explaining or commenting on something that they wrote. You know, I really like, you know, it's the almost what we call the pleasure sandwich. You know, I really like this, and this, da 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 da, and then you know, you add some depth to what it is that they wrote.
When you put up discussions, when you had put it up in OTE, did you never closed them down? We were always able to go back to see them, right?
Right.
Okay, because that's what I was wondering. You know, when I put up the discussion, it says, you know, when do you want to end it? And I don't really want to end it because I want them to be able to go back, especially for the writing, well, both literature and writing, so that they could see the questions that would help them maybe think more about the novel they're reading or about the writing that they're doing. Okay, so yeah, so I'm not going to close them. Yeah.
Well, especially because
I gave them a time that they had to get that post in by.
Right.
But I didn't close it for them to go back and look at it.
Right. Yeah. And that's the guidance. You know, I have a very clear Wednesday, Friday, Sunday schedule for them to post, respond, circle back.
Okay.
And that's for every discussion.
That's
so
right.
tomorrow night will be the first deadline for their first post. So I should see a flurry of activity today and tomorrow.
Okay.
Because when I checked yesterday, there were only three students that had jumped in, and I have 40. So
yeah,
I'm sure they don't know. But I'm gonna send a little reminder today and say, excuse me, I know that you think the course starts tomorrow, but you know, you have a discussion that kicks off tomorrow night. And granted, I'm gonna have class with them before, but I'm gonna, you know, I just want to make sure that they know, because I want to get them into a rhythm right off the bat, which is, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is when they consume the content and they get familiar with the topic. And then Wednesday night is their first part of the discussion. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they are struggling with the content. They're working on an assignment. They're working through the discussion. And then they wrap everything up by Sunday night.
And how many times a week do you meet that class?
Once.
Okay. And what day?
Wednesdays 5 to 7:50.
Okay, so mine is on a Wednesday too, and you still do Monday, Wednesday. Okay, all right.
So it's just for me, it was part of this thinking. So, you know, I think I look at all my courses through an asynchronous lens. I look at all of them through the lens of the learning management system. You know, everything I put in for the course, everything's in the LMS. All of the content, all of the assignments, the projects, the assessments.
Right.
That way, you know, for instance, there could be a week where I'm going to be completely off grid. You know, I'm going to go to Manitoba if they let me in. I'm going to go to, you know, I'm going to go somewhere, you know, find some way out of this country to a different place. And I'm going to say, okay, this week we're not going to have a live class, but I'm adding a couple of pieces for you to engage in. And so just do it in your own time. And that was part of the thing that I talked about during OTE is, you know, because some of the cohort both June and July, couldn't wrap their head around the idea that, wait, I'm teaching remote in the fall. Why am I designing a course for asynchronous? I'm like, okay, let's imagine
Right.
that
Yeah.
3 weeks during your remote course, you need to be off grid. You need to be away. You're going to a conference. You have a family thing, whatever. Okay, so design it for that. And if you have everything, whether it's remote or asynchronous course, if you have everything built into your LMS, if it's Canvas, Blackboard, if everything's there,
You
you're
could go
good.
either way. Right. You're good. And that's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly how I'm building it. And I told them that in class. I said, just on the off shot, but we'll meet. We'll do office hours or we'll have a class if we can, if I can figure out how to do that on Zoom or WebEx. And, but I'm doing it, I'm building it so that it is exactly like OTE was.
Good. It's a good
Everything,
model.
yeah,
OT is
yeah.
pretty solid. We covered yesterday in one of yesterday's session, the morning session. So it's going to be the 8, today's the 25th, right? So 824A video, which will be on the website. We recorded and we walked through the WebEx process.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not complex. And ironically, I was joking about how Zoom is so good and it doesn't break down. And then yesterday it broke down.
Yeah, I read that in an email. So what do you think the best way to do office hours is? WebEx?
So office hours, which is good because that was next on my list. Office hours.
I'm sorry, I'm just like rolling here.
No, you're fine. And then Rosa, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. I'm watching the chat. So office hours, I think you follow the similar approach where you identify through a poll when is good for them to gather together, whether individually or as a group. And you use that to identify a time. Now I'm talking about office hours in the same OTE fashion where we bring in everybody together.
Mm-hmm.
If you're fully asynchronous, then that makes a lot of sense. If you're already meeting once a week, then that essentially, I look at that as kind of office hours in the way that we kind of did it, because I want to use that time as much as possible to check in with the students. I'm looking at it as I'm going to walk into class normally, tomorrow's the first class, so it's a little bit of an exception, but in normal weeks, I'm going to walk into that class and say, you've all read what you're supposed to read. You've consumed what you're supposed to consume. Now let's talk about applying the application of that material. And that's going to be the conversation. But a good chunk of that time, probably 30 minutes each time I meet with them, I'm just going to check in with them and talk to them and make sure they're okay. And I'm going to use my little strategies of, Samantha, Mark, Rubio, I'm going to use their names and make them feel like they matter and make notes for any issues that they're having that I can pass on to different people that I know on campus, and then get them support where they need it, because some of that stuff isn't going to come out otherwise. And then I'll get into the content. I'll do, a little bit of back and forth, throw them into some breakout rooms, do some breakout room work, which is the benefit of using Zoom over other platforms, is it's already built in.
You can do the breakout room. Yeah.
WebEx can, but that's only if you use WebEx training, I guess. And I'm just not going to even mess with it.
Yeah, they said that was crazy.
Nobody's telling me that I have to use WebEx, so I'm just going to use Zoom. But I did set up WebEx as my backup just in case Zoom goes down.
So I know that WebEx, I can just go, through Cisco and get WebEx, and I can do that. But with Zoom, do I need a special account?
Good question. So Zoom is not built into our experience at St. John's.
Okay.
So it's not really supported. So if you want to use Zoom, you can ask, but my understanding is they won't give you a Zoom account. I know my other institutions do. So right now I have 3 pro accounts, which is fine.
Uh-huh.
The 2 schools gave me pro accounts, and then I bought my own. And I think
Okay.
it was like $15 for the year.
Oh, okay.
So it's a good investment, and then you can do all these things to customize it. Like if you notice, when I stop my video, I can put the image of the event that we're in right now.
Right. Okay.
So you can do different
Fun.
things, which are pretty neat.
Okay.
And then it expands the storage that you have and all this other stuff. So my guess is that they're going to say, oh, that's very nice, Debbie, that you want to use Zoom. We don't support it. We support
Okay.
you, but we don't
Yeah.
support it.
Yeah.
If you'd like to have a pro account, you should go and buy it, which is fine. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
you know, if it allows us to be better educators, $15 is negligible.
Right.
And I use it for so many other things. I do calls with people all over the
Yeah.
world. You know, it's just really, really helpful. All right, I'm going to transition into a question that Rosa put in there.
Okay.
How to add different points in a quiz. So in an asynchronous course, just as much as a remote course, you know, you're going to set up these quizzes. So I'm going to share my screen, and I will set up a quiz. And I'm going to do a whole thing on assessments. I forget which day, but I want to really get into what assessments look like. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Oh no, there it is. Can you see? Yeah, you see my Blackboard? I mean my Canvas?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to add to week 2. I'm going to add to week 2 a quiz. Okay. So you go into, you do the little plus sign,
Right.
then choose quiz. I'm going to do new quiz, and I'm going to say marketing. Okay, actually, I'm just going to call it quiz number 1. I'll follow a certain format. Q. Let's see, I'm not doing a quiz grade for the course, so I'm going to do this under P1, which is part of participation. Okay, so I'm going to use my. This isn't exactly what Rosa's asking, but I'm going to do what she needs me to do. But I use quizzes largely as learning activities. I use them as a way to promote the understanding of certain things. So I bake it into my participation grade. So as long as they participate in the quizzes every week, it helps their grade in terms of getting participation, which is 10% of their final grade. And I can break that out a little bit more later. So I'm going to put it under participation, even though I had quizzes there. All right, so I've added quiz number 1. It's got this little rocket ship, which is kind of fun. And this quiz is unpublished, great. So I'm going to edit. So there's 2 parts to the questions. So this is the name, so I can write, okay, every other week you will have a quiz that helps you to better understand the topic. And just for fun, just because I like to reinforce some of the things that we're learning together, I'm going to do it as a video too. Hi everyone, this is Professor D, and I want to introduce you to a learning quiz. The learning quiz is intended to help you better understand the material from week to week. And so it's generally about 5 questions. The idea is really to get you to look into the writing. Oh, something went wrong. That's interesting. It finally conflicted with Zoom. I think that's what happened.
Oh, wow.
That's neat. That's fine. Same process. I'll do it later. That's the first time that's happened. Which is fine. I mean, I'm never really gonna be recording video for my course while I'm in the Zoom at the same time.
Right.
But I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna put insert video. Okay. So this is the every other week you'll have a quiz that helps you better understand the topic. It will generally be 5 questions. This quiz is focused on traditional marketing. Okay, so I'll keep it simple. So that's just the setup for the quiz. That's the first thing that they'll see at the top. Then we go into questions. So details are here. You click on questions, and then you add the first new question. I don't know why it's formatted this way, but it says question. I just put 1, you know, because I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
So multiple choice. Let's see. So we'll do multiple choice. What is an example? And these are going to be shabby questions because I'm just doing it on the fly. But what is an example of traditional marketing? You know, the answer, correct answer, I'll put newspaper ad, back when people used to read newspapers. Possible answer, PPC, which they'll have to look up, which forces them to do that. Guerrilla marketing, again, they'll have to look that up. And then I can put sorry.
All new terms. When I was in public relations, that would have been totally foreign, but of course that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's fun. I love
That's a form
teaching
of marketing, the public relations, except it was, you know, we didn't pay for the space. We bartered most of the time, and you know,
public relations is traditional marketing for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. So that's question number 1, and then you were asking about the points, and so I have to reduce my screen so that I can actually see it. So here I'm going to go back into edit. You can see that, Rosa. And the points are over here. So if I'm doing 5 questions, I'll do this as 20 points each. And then I save. What I'll do very often is I'll write the questions and then I'll come back and then I'll do the points afterwards. I'll do one more just for clarity. So instead of multiple choice, I'll do true, false. And I'll say, I'm going to play off of what you said, Debbie. Public relations is part of marketing. We'll see what they think.
Yeah.
But
I wonder how many would know what public relations is. People always question that. Oh, is that like advertising? And I say, well, yeah, but you know, except we don't pay for it. You know.
Yeah, but that's the answer.
Right.
Comments. Okay, so that's done, and then it's still 1 point. So we want to change that to, you know, maybe this one I put 10 points. Because what I will do is very often I'll do a bigger question to get them thinking a little bit more. So this one would be essay question. I'll usually do it as the last one. In your opinion, which is kind of a gimme. The second you say in your opinion, because again, it's I see the quizzes as a learning tool. In your opinion, will marketing be different in the post-COVID era?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would have had to have read the material because, I mean, you can only, you know, BS so much on this.
Yep. The examples.
Be specific, right? Therefore.
Yep. And I'm very intentional about, I match up the number of examples with the amount of points that I'm going to give them. So actually, I'm going to change this to 4 examples, and then I'm going to make it 40 points. that way each example will be worth 10 points. And so now I'm up to 40, 50, 70 points. So I have another 30 to give between two. So I'll give another gimme, kind of an easy one. Let's see. Multiple choice. What is a channel that can be used? They always get tripped up over what a channel is because they think TV channel.
Mm-hmm.
Even though actually, no, now less, they don't really consider them channels as much because they're so, Netflix, Amazon, what's a channel?
Right.
So actually it's making it easier. What is a channel that can be used for marketing? Let's see, I'm just gonna put TV. Oh, actually no, that'd be too easy. Magazine. Now I gotta use Oxygen.
Oxygen Network. Okay.
Let's see, I need to add questions. Wait, did I do true false? No, I did multiple choice. Oh, something wrong here. Oh, there it is. Add another answer. ESPN. Actually, you know what? I'm messing up because those could be considered channels.
But they're all the same except for magazine. One is print, the other one's all media.
Yeah, I don't want to mess them up too much. This will mess them up. Hulu. ESPN. So Hulu is a channel. Magazine is a channel. No, magazine is a category.
Right.
I almost screwed up. I'm going to say, let me see. I already used PPC, which they know. I'm going to use, looking around my office. Time Magazine still exists?
Yeah.
I'm going to do Rolling Stone.
Mm.
My wife used to work there. Rolling Stone, Oxygen. Actually, these are all. Oh, actually, which is not a channel. Not a.
Vogel was the editor at Rolling Stone. He was one of my teachers when I was doing marketing classes at the new school.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of good stories.
Which is not a channel. So I'm going to put this is Rolling Stone, and then what's not a channel? Magazine. There you go. Actually, that's going to be confusing because I'm just going to say magazine. Because magazine's a category, not an actual channel. They'll get tripped up over it, but it's okay. All right. Of course, the points are off. Rosa, is this making sense to you?
She's there.
She's there. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing screen. All right, so that's just an example of how to do a quiz. Again, fully asynchronous. Anything you do from an assessment perspective can be fully asynchronous. And this just as a little preview for when we do the all about assessments session, we need to think beyond just the traditional quizzes and tests for assessments. And part of that is doing the demo. For instance, if you were doing a public speaking course, an assessment could be them actually giving a speech. And you're welcome, Rosa. And so the demo is something that I really want to push for people because I don't think they always realize that that's an option for them in terms of being able to assess whether or not they get the information. And so it follows from learning objective to content to learning activities and then the assessment. it allows you to really know whether or not the students get what they're supposed to get. So it's good.
When OTE was built, it had these videos in there. For instance, I use question for the instructor. I was able to pull it from OTE
Sure.
and put it right into my Canvas. But they were all those little videos. Like, where did they come from? People, they just made them, the instructional videos?
Yes and no. Some were borrowed, some were created. I mean, some of those videos have been around for quite a few years.
Oh, okay.
You know, I laugh at one of the videos that has me in it because that's from my old office in Williamsburg, which that's a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
But I think that, you know, if a video is evergreen, if it's good content, it doesn't have to
Right.
be recreated. And sometimes it's fun to do as a throwback, you know, different
I
areas. Yep.
the question for the instructor I thought was a good one, you know, and so I put it on my homepage and I figured out how, once you showed me the link, I've been like link crazy. I've
Oh, it makes life so much
got
easier. Just,
this down pat. It's great.
and it's a much cleaner user
Yes,
experience for the students, you
yes,
know, to be able to find everything in one page, read this, watch this, etc.
right.
All right. And we got another one from Rosa. Can you please show how to create a holding that you do? Ah, sure. Share screen, go back to Canvas. All right, so I'm gonna go back to home. So my home for my course is the modules. And so here you have all these different folders, and then there's the holding. And so the holding is just a regular module. So you just go up here, create a new module, call it holding. I'm going to say holding 2 because I already have a holding. And then it'll be all the way at the bottom. And I can add, you know, I can add little notes like, don't forget, oh, don't forget to update discussion article. And so you can put little things in here. You can put pages that you want to work on. New page on is the press release dead? It's always a fun one.
Mm.
And then it's just you're basically queuing it up, and you can minimize it a little bit, and then you can take it and you can drag it to a different part of the modules, but nobody can see it, you know, until there's the little green,
Right,
you know, until you publish. Nobody's seeing any of this actually.
right.
Even week 2 isn't visible to my students right now. The only thing that's visible is everything with the green check mark. So did that answer your question, Rosa? Dun, 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 dun. I'm sure it did, but, and she says,
So the holding is just for things that you're working on, but you don't want to publish.
right.
But you can take it out of the holding and put it into any week?
Yeah.
Okay.
The nice thing about a holding area, so this one, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
if I wanted to put it in week 8, if it'll let me, just have to go like this. And there it is. So
Okay.
that's in week 8. Now, the one thing that I do here, which you'll notice under every one of them, I gave
Right.
myself a note, mention 20 students. And it's just a reminder to mention 20 students. Because I have 40
Okay.
students in the class, so one of my strategies that they're not going to know is that I'm going to make sure that I say their name either in a video, in an email, in our live course, and say, Susie, what do you think about this? Jamal, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
And so that they feel like they matter. Or I may comment, you know, how is this going? Grace is one of my students who's an athlete. And I'm going to say, Grace, you know, how's the team? You know, just in that way of checking in with them. And I'll have my little list of all their names with their photos that I can get off of UIS, which is helpful.
Okay.
Off of Banner. So, any last questions before we wrap? Curiosities? Hopefully you learned a couple new things today.
Yeah. I can't think of anything I had to list. How to use chat in Canvas.
You don't.
Okay.
Yeah, chat.
Somebody put a website to youtube.com watch, and I don't, I haven't checked it out yet.
Okay. Because there's a chat function within Canvas.
I think so. I don't know.
Let's see. I don't see an actual chat here, but I mean, I know if I wanted to create a chat situation, I would go into the discussions and I would create a chat, a little cafe like we had in OTE.
Right.
So I would add that within the discussion area, student chat.
I did.
Yeah, there you go.
I did.
So I think that's the
You
chat.
see the little, you see next to outcomes where it has the eye, that goes away once you publish, right? I see where it says outcomes on your page, and it has the eye with the line through it, which means that you can't see it, students can't see it. When you publish, because I had that on my modulus for one of them, and then I published it and then it came off, so.
Yeah, I don't think, it's kind of a weird thing that they added. I didn't, that was new this year. Okay, Rosa's leaving now. Okay.
All right.
Bye, Rosa. And Debbie, I'm going to say bye to you too then.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
And
okay.
I'll post this as well on the website. I have 3 to post now.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.